Welcome everyone to another edition of On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. It's going to be season 5, episode 22.
Wow.
As usual, I have
Time
my
flies.
partner. Time flies, doesn't it? my partner, my big brother, my one of my idols, Mr. Nick Valente. Nick, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing good, Jay. And I
Good.
understand we have a friend of yours, local
Yes.
neighbor, Dave. How are you doing here today, Dave?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Excellent, excellent. Just can't wait to get into this stuff here.
Me
This sounds
too.
like some really crazy things.
Oh, definitely.
Oh yeah, he's had some cool experiences. So Dave, can you give us a quick background on yourself? Just how you got into cryptozoology and stuff like that?
Oh, definitely. So basically got into cryptozoology when I must have been at least 10 or 11. My uncle was really big into it. He's still into it, but I mean, with his age, he's kind of slowed down with a lot of that stuff.
Right.
But he used to scare me a lot with like those videos online, Sasquatch sightings and whatnot. And eventually, it was around, I think probably middle school is when I started to kind of get more involved with it, like doing more research, reading more books on it, and then from there it just spiked.
Yeah. Okay. What about now? I know you've had quite a few experiences. You mind filling us in, starting your first?
Yep. Well, basically the first encounter that I had, I was actually really, really young, and I think personally it was a dogman. I mean, I didn't know anything about it at that age. I didn't really know about it until I finally learned what the dogman was, and that was when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But this was behind our grandparents' property here on the reservation in Akwesasne.
Okay.
And I was back there with a friend of mine, and there's a big swamp. Now it's not really much of a swamp anymore because Ducks Unlimited came in and they dug out ponds for the ducks and the geese.
Yeah.
And a lot of the water drained out, so it's mostly just you got a really large wetland pond, and then you got a couple smaller ones. But before that, there was a big channel back there, and then we had a boardwalk that my uncle made, and it went through all the cattails. These cattails were like 10 feet tall.
Right.
Excuse me, Dave, just for our listening audience, we're talking about upstate New York, correct?
Yep, that is correct.
Okay.
Like right on the St. Lawrence River.
Ah, yeah. Oh, that's even better.
Yeah, he's right down the road from me.
Oh yeah, not very far away.
No.
But we went back there. We were just messing around trying to build like a bridge across a little channel where the water was flowing into the wetland.
Yep.
And we found an old beaver hut that was back there because the water levels had gone down, so the beaver obviously abandoned it, so it was on dry land. Well, something made it into like a den because they dug a hole out of the side. Okay. And the interior was all hollowed out, and there was like 3 or 4 chambers on the inside, like down in the ground. It was almost like a cave system. It was really cool looking. But my buddy went down in because he was curious. He wanted to crawl inside and see what was in there. And when he crawled in, and he said it smelled like wet dog in there for one thing, which, obviously beaver's not going to smell like wet dog.
Right.
And he said there was bones that were scattered around inside, like animal bones and whatnot. So he took out his cell phone. It was one of the early cell phones, so the flashlight on it was like really crappy. But he went down to the second chamber that was in there, and there was even more bones. And they're all scattered around. And he said over in the corner of this chamber was like, it looked like a nest, and it was made out of like branches. And he said there was like articles of like human clothing in there.
Oh, boy.
He said it was really weird because like he said there was a jacket that was on the ground. It was really old. He looked like something like somebody would wear like in the 70s, those old poofy winter jackets.
Yeah.
And he said it looked like it had claw marks in it, which was really weird. And the bones that were in there, I mean, he wasn't sure if they were from a deer. And he said some of them actually looked human, but I mean, he didn't really know his animal anatomy or whatnot. So
yeah,
he thinks it might have been just like a white-tailed deer. But something was down deeper in the burrow because he could hear something breathing. And at that point, he figured, I'm going to get the hell out of Dodge. So he got out of the den, and he told me, he's like, there's something in there. Wow. And he said it was making noise. So we took off, and as we were running through the boardwalk, and this little boardwalk was just like 2x8s that were laid down in the swamp, so you didn't have to go through all the water. Something came crashing through the cattails behind us, and because the cattails were so tall, you could see like the cattails were starting to part as it was coming towards us. And we finally got out of the swamp, got on the four-wheeler, and we just took off back to the house.
Wow. So there's
Did
the
your
bone.
buddies, yeah, with the bones, did your buddies say anything about finding skulls?
He just said there was like animal skulls, like raccoons, and he said there was definitely an antler. So must have been like a deer skull buried inside the
Right.
like pile of bones that was there. But he didn't
Hmm.
say he did sign like human style skulls down there.
He was lucky because if there was something breathing in there, I mean, that could have been the female. If it was a
Yeah.
dog man, it could have been the female dog man, and maybe she was nursing, or maybe she was with puppies or whatever. And he's lucky he got in and got out.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
They would have sensed that he walked in there immediately. Wow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to your interest in cryptozoology, did that freak you out and turn you off to it, or did it send you looking for answers?
More or less sent me looking for answers. I mean, after that, I did have night terrors about it. But at the same time, I was like, I want to figure out what it was, because I even told my uncle about it, and he's like, that doesn't sound like a Bigfoot. And
No.
he was almost kind of going at the fact that he's like, oh, maybe it was a bear. And I was like, I don't think it was a bear. It's like when we went in there, it smelled like a wet dog. And the thing is, I've been around people that have, shot and harvested bears during hunting season, know what a bear smells like. And this was like a completely different smell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the truth. A bear has its distinctive odor.
It's very
Definitely.
unique. Yeah.
Whoa.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So from that point on, Dave, how'd it progress?
Well, after that, nothing really happened. And then once, like I said, I got more and more into finding out, like what was living back there. I
Yeah.
eventually was told stories, of experiences that my uncle and my mom and my aunts have had.
Okay.
And of course, these would have predated the encounter I had. But when they were kids, they had a Sasquatch encounter there a couple times.
Okay.
And the first time that they saw a Sasquatch, I believe it was my uncle, and they had an old farmhouse there, and the windows were built really, really high off the ground. Like I think they were like 8 or 9 feet. And they were eating dinner one night, and he just remembers looking over at the window, and he saw a big ape-like face looking through the window at him as they were eating. And my grandfather went out with his rifle to go and see what it was, and he didn't find anything. But after that, the time passed, and my mom had an encounter, and she had this encounter on a horse.
Oh, okay.
And when she was out horseback riding, that would have been where we have a gun range back there now.
Yep.
And a lot of it's cleared off in that area. I mean, it's really thick now because it used to be field, but my uncles haven't mowed it, so it's really thick back there. I mean, if there's something back there, there's definitely going to be something there now because of how thick it is. But when she was horseback riding, she got back just about to where the gun range was, and her horse just started freaking out. And she was looking around, seeing what he was freaking out about. And over in the corner next to this hemlock tree, which the hemlock tree is actually surprisingly still there. It's a lot bigger now. She said there is this big humanoid figure standing like over in the corner of the field. It had its hand up on a branch, and it was watching her and her horse. And I remember she was telling me about it. I asked her, like, what were the facial features and whatnot. And she said it kind of had like a snout. And she said she did see ears. So
Okay.
that's why I kind of started thinking, I was like, oh, did she really see a Bigfoot, or did she see a Dogman? Because the thing with a horse, I mean, like, if you like refer to like the Patterson Gimlin film, those guys were on horseback when they got that footage,
Right.
Yeah.
and the horses didn't really freak out.
No.
But when you're near something that is, a predator like a Dogman, a horse, cow, any animal is going to freak out because once they smell it, they know that something is near.
Yeah,
Right.
you
I
know
get
what?
the feeling.
Through all the research I've done, it's absolutely true. Just speaking from the research and speaking to people, a lot of times the horses do not get spooked. Actually, all the time, they don't get spooked by Bigfoot.
No.
But Dogman, definitely they get spooked by. I mean, there's a huge difference. I think they're putting out a certain type of vibe, certain type of energy, and they're definitely not a nice energy that they put out.
Right.
Oh, for sure, especially the stories that I've heard.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
was your mother's horse upset?
Oh yeah, he was very upset.
Ah,
He almost bucked her off actually,
oh,
but she had the death grip on him, so he just took off, running right back to the house, and she held on for dear life.
Did she say how big this thing was, Dave?
She said at least 9 or 10 feet tall.
That's a big one.
Oh, for sure.
huh.
That's big. That's big. So now that was right on. That was in Akwesasne as well.
Yep, that was right up back of my grandparents.
Okay. Okay. Now, as far as your experiences go, when I know you've had a couple, right?
Yep, I've
Over
had a
the years.
couple.
Okay.
Um, the encounters that I had, like I had the first one, which I didn't know was a dog man at the time, but the other encounters I had were, I'd say probably my junior year of high school,
Yeah.
and it was during hunting season. And the first one that I had was during the late season. I think it was just before rifle was about to close and switch to muzzleloading. So it
Okay. So it
was
was
November, I believe, end of
November.
November.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was one of those years where we got a lot of snow. I
Yep.
mean, we easily had like a foot and a half, maybe.
Yep.
And we have this portion on my father's property, which this is down near Herman, New York. So it'd be
Yes.
like the Herman, Governor, DeKalb area.
Yep.
And the property he has, I don't know how many acres it is total, but I mean it's pretty big property.
Yeah.
And at the time this happened, we also had a section of property that we didn't do deer drives anymore. We just left it alone so the deer had some place to go and be comfortable.
Right.
And I think because of him doing that and the amount of deer that were coming back onto the property, I mean, that's kind of a dinner bell for something to come in because, obviously it's got a food source.
Oh
Sure.
yeah.
But the encounter, I was on night set. It was probably about 45 minutes before dark. And where I was sitting, it's an old skidder road, and it's in the really large area of hemlock and pine trees. So it's really, really dark, even during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting on a trail that we've seen bucks on it occasionally. And during that particular day, one must have been spreading his scent along the deer trail that was there because you could smell him. But I was sitting there that night and I noticed it got really, really quiet. Like the birds weren't making any noises. Like there was nothing. It was just dead quiet. All I heard was the wind. And as I was sitting there, I remember I could hear something coming through the hemlocks in my direction. And because they're so thick in there, there's not really much snow on the ground. So
Right.
I could hear it stepping on branches and breaking branches. And at first, because it sounded like it was bipedal, I assumed that maybe it was our neighbor. Maybe our neighbor was walking through the woods, maybe walking out a night set or walking the line on his property, which wasn't very far away. And as I sat there, I could see movement, and it got closer and closer and closer and closer. And I noticed it was definitely something on two legs. And unfortunately, at the time too, is when I had issues with my eyesight because I had to get glasses eventually because I was nearsighted. But it got close enough to the point where, I mean, it was probably 15 yards away, and it stepped into an area that had a little bit more sunshine coming through it before, the sun actually went down and got dark.
Mm.
And that's when I saw how big it was, and I saw what it looked like. And to give like a really good description of what it looked like, the werewolf from Bad Moon is probably the closest resemblance I can get to it. Just other than not having like that constant aggressive like um, expression on its face.
Right.
Okay. So
And
like from like under like an underworld type werewolf description. You know the
um
movie Underworld, kind of like that, or a little bit different.
definitely more canine and like
Okay.
really more slim snout, and the ears were definitely more pronounced, a lot taller
Okay.
than the ones in Underworld.
Okay.
And it also didn't have like the backward bent kind of legs that people talk about, the digitigrade legs.
Right.
Yep.
It had more like Sasquatch style legs.
Same as my encounter. Yep. Yep.
And
Interesting.
Which is not uncommon, Dave. There's two different types of well, there's 7 different types of Dogman, but amongst
Mhm.
them, they have the German Shepherd type legs that go, the knees are backwards, and then they have the human type where the knees go forward like we have.
Mhm.
So that's not an uncommon thing. Now, was the hair like dark, light? What was that like?
It's kind of like in between. It was kind of a grayish black, so it wasn't necessarily dark, but it wasn't really light. It
Like a
was like,
slate? Yeah.
I think it was a grayish color, but it also might have been brown. It was hard to tell because of how dark it was where I was sitting.
Right.
What would you estimate the height on this thing?
Look, maybe about maybe
7 feet,
7.5 foot tall.
Yeah.
which is average, right, Nick?
That's an average. 7 is an
Yeah,
average, and
yeah,
they'll generally go up to about 7, 7, 7,
yeah,
8.
Mhm.
yeah. So, sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. But yeah, when it came out and it stepped into that little lighted area, uh, I don't think it saw me at first because where I was sitting, it was pretty like hunched back and like this little. It was a plastic lawn chair that my dad put out, and it's tucked between 4 hemlock trees, so you're pretty well hidden. That's why he put it there so the deer couldn't see you.
Yeah,
But it didn't see me at first, I don't think, but it did look in my direction. I stayed still, and at first I was thinking, is this a person in a costume? And that's when I could see like the facial features were moving, and like you could see its nose was moving, and I could hear it like sniffing. Because I mean, I think it probably saw me. It was trying to figure out what I was,
yeah.
and it stepped
Dinner.
onto the road or the skidder road, and it stepped on a branch and it cracked. And fortunately for me, I had a bunch of ruffed grouse that were in the tree above me. They were roosting, and the noise scared them, and they just took off flying. And when they fly, they sound like a damn helicopter.
Yeah, they do.
So
Mm.
as soon as that happened, it like saw the birds and was like, "What the hell is going on?" And then I just remember it turned around and it went right back the way it came.
Wow,
Hmm.
wow. Now, did it have a tail?
I didn't see a tail. It just looked like like if a Bigfoot had its backside turned to you. That's basically what it looked like.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And now it was in Herman, you said,
Yep. Yeah,
which
I didn't.
is that's for Nick. That's about what, Dave? 40 minutes south of us.
I think so. About 40 minutes, 45.
Yeah, yeah. Which
But
also is right along the St. Lawrence and like the Ragged Rivers, right, Dave?
I think it's
Um,
definitely in. It would be more towards the Oswegatchie, I think.
Alzrachi, that's it. Okay,
Yep.
so there's a big water source there, and
Oh, for
all
sure.
the deer, a lot of deer, a lot of big deer down
Mm.
that way. So a lot of be
Oh
like
yeah.
a nice buffet.
Oh yeah. There's
Mm.
tons of animals, deer, turkey, you name it.
Yeah,
Plus, it has the water source, so food,
exactly.
water, and all it has to do is provide its own shelter there.
Yep, exactly,
Yep. And we do
exactly.
have dens there. We've seen dens.
Okay.
Any caves or mines over there?
Well, there's an alleged cave there. It's a small one, but we haven't
Hmm.
been able to find it. But um, one of the previous property owners said that there is one back there.
Okay.
I would, if you do find it, I would send a like a mobile drone in there,
Hmm.
rather than walking in there because that
Right.
would be, oh God, I can't imagine walking into something like that.
Me neither. Surprising one like that and having it.
I mean, they have these cars that are this big and they've got heavy duty treads and you've got infrared and you have a nice zoom lens on there and everything and it's a lot safer than crawling in there like your buddy went into that one cave. I think he was lucky. I think he
Yeah.
came out lucky. That is amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. I still talk to him about it once in a while, and he's like, I don't really like to think about it that much.
Now, Dave, I remember a story you told me last time I interviewed you, and Nick, I haven't told you about this, but very interesting. When I think it was your second Dogman encounter and the Sasquatch. You think the Sasquatch kind of gave you aid? Was that you who was telling me about that?
Yeah, that was on the same property,
Okay.
and I haven't told anybody but you guys because I mean, my family members they don't really believe in that stuff. My dad especially. I mean, I've seen him come back and been pale as a ghost before, so I mean, he might have seen something there. And I also forgot to mention my uncle's also been growled at by something. Uh,
Okay.
he went to go sit on the back corner of our grandfather's, and as he was getting out of his stand, he said something growled at him, and he said it definitely wasn't a bear. It was really deep, and it had like it was reverberating in his chest. He could feel it in his chest.
Oh yeah.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
exactly.
getting hit.
Yep.
Oh, definitely. And he got the hell out of Dodge, regardless.
Oh God.
I don't
but
blame him.
but the Bigfoot slash Dogman encounter, I think there was a Bigfoot that was hanging out on that property for like years and years. Because I mean, when I was a kid, I remember what I'm pretty sure was a Bigfoot. It was when I first started to hunt, and my dad put me on a deer drive, and where I was sitting, like it was hardwoods, and then there was like a bunch of pine trees and hemlocks that bordered it, so it was really dark. And I kept hearing something like sneaking up through the tree line, staying in the dark. And there's a big like down tree with a huge root system, and I remember seeing its face poking through it, like watching me,
Yeah.
and it looked very, very ape-like. Like
Okay.
he never did anything to like harm me, but like as soon as my dad started walking towards me, because I could hear him walking through the woods, it took off. And when
Yeah.
it ran, it was definitely bipedal.
Okay.
But I think I had like more and more experiences with him like on that property, because I mean there was days where I'd be either driving or setting, and I would think that it was either another driver that I would hear. And a lot of the places that I'm setting, it was just so thick in the underbrush that you couldn't really see anything. But a lot of times I would see a large black figure moving through like
Sure.
all the shrubs,
Right.
and there's no way it was a human because of how tall it was.
Right.
Hmm.
So basically, the encounter that I had with the dog man was on this property that we called the Wooden Gate,
Okay.
and we were doing a drive, and I was driving that day, and I was pushing it down towards my grandfather's with my father. And I remember as I was walking down the way I was supposed to, following this ridge line, over to my right was the hemlock and pine forest, which was really thick and dark, and then over to my left was just nothing but normal hardwoods and like what kind of plants they are. They're really thorny. I don't know if they're like blackberry or raspberry bushes.
Yeah.
It's really thick in there, and I could hear something was paralleling me on my right, and then something else is paralleling me on my left.
Hmm.
And as I was making my way through, whatever was on the right was trying to move closer to me, but I couldn't see it because it was so dark.
Right.
I was like, "There's no way this is a deer. If it was a deer, it would have took off because they don't want to be around when you're doing a drive. And
Right.
if it was a deer, it would have been heading in the opposite direction away from me. And then whatever was to my left was getting closer to me as well, but it sounded like it was starting to like make a circle around me and get in front of me and move over
Hmm.
to the right. And then I got to the point where I got to this drop off, and it was this really rocky ledge, and I had to go down to get to this other section to continue the drive. And as I was before I got to the ledge and before I could see down it, something went crashing through down below. And at that same time, whatever was over to my right was slowly kind of sound like it was like kind of stalking towards me. You could like hear it very slowly putting its hands down on the ground.
Huh?
And just as soon as that happened, I heard like there was the biggest like commotion over in the hemlock trees like I've ever heard in my life. Like you could hear like snarling and growling, and it sounded like something was. It sounded like a wood knock, but like instead of whatever was hitting the object, it didn't sound like it was hitting wood. It sounded like it was hitting like a flesh and blood
Oh,
object,
right.
and it sounded like a fight. Like I mean, if you like listen to like a bear tussle like on YouTube when they get into a fight with each other, it sounded almost just like that.
Yeah.
And that's when I remember I could smell like really pungent like wet dog smell, and I could also smell like that really skunky type smell like people
Hmm.
describe with Bigfoot.
Right.
And I guess he must have scared it off, because I remember hearing like this really like high pitched yelp,
Yeah.
and it took off running, and I could hear something on four legs take off running through the woods. But whatever it was big because it was crashing through the woods, breaking branches.
Hmm.
Right. Wow. Um. So from that point on, did you get more involved in the investigation part of it?
Oh, definitely. Like after high school and like into my college years, I started driving up to the woods at nighttime, particularly, and I'd go up and like listen and see if I could hear any howls and whatnot. and we had one particular hunting season that was after deer season, and we were hunting coyotes.
Mm.
And I figured that, since we're gonna do some coyote calls, I brought up um, some of my own like recording devices and whatnot, just to hear what we'd hear, because we were blasting like rabbit calls all day to call in the coyotes.
Yeah.
And we went around the property and did this huge loop. And the thing about that day is it was super foggy, so you couldn't really see very much.
Right.
And we had coyotes that came in, but for some reason they didn't want to come into the call. Like they stayed as far away as they could, but because we could hear them howling and yipping.
Sure.
Hmm.
And by the end of the day, we hadn't seen a single thing. And those guys were done hunting, and I was gonna head back home. But after my dad went home, it got dark, and I decided, I guess I'll stay up at the woods and see what I can hear. And the coyotes were still going off, but they were really far back out in the woods, and that's when I heard something else howl. And I've got the recording somewhere on my phone. I could send it to you.
Okay.
But the closest resemblance to what the howl sounded, it sounded just like the werewolves from Ginger Snaps. That's what it sounded like.
Okay.
So it wasn't really like the howl, it was like a deep moan.
Moan. Yeah.
And when it did that like howl, I could feel it vibrating in my chest.
Yeah.
And despite it being really far away,
Sure.
I also
Like
drove up a couple times, and they followed my truck. I could see like their eyes in my rear lights. So every single time I'd hit the brakes, you could see like the red light shining in their eyes.
oh
But
wow.
they would never get any closer than they needed to be. Like they weren't really like aggressive. They just kind of kept their distance.
Right.
Dave,
This is an.
You
Go
ever
ahead,
go
Nick.
out with a group of people on your field investigations?
I haven't been able to get a group, but my friend Jack, he's been going out and we do investigations together.
Right.
And him and I definitely want to start getting out and doing more stuff. Like we want to try to eventually get a group going. But I did mention him about or mention you guys to him, and he would definitely be interested in going out and doing some investigations.
Very cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd love to have you come out with us when that comes up and stuff. That'd be very, very cool. Um, Now, recently, you just sent me some pictures recently. You want to tell us a little bit about that because those are interesting.
That was a really freaky day. Um,
Yeah.
so after I met Jack, we started doing like paranormal investigations with ghosts and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we went to this old, I think it was like I forget what kind of, like those theaters they had back in the day where people would put on plays for entertainment.
Yeah.
Right.
It's in Russell, New York.
Yeah.
And we went there, we did an investigation. We got like some spirits and whatnot active on the SB7, and we saw some like spirits up on the balcony moving around. And after that, I told him that, I think the property that my parents are living on is haunted. And the reason being is because one of our family members, Andreas, he passed away from cancer.
Mm,
And I think he passed away right here on the property. He didn't want to be put in a hospital or whatnot. He just wanted to go
right.
peacefully.
Sure.
And um, my mom's told me she's seen spirits in the backyard. She's had really weird feelings around the house. She said the pets have seen them. Like the pets will just go up to the window and they'll just stare and stare and stare. And our dogs will just randomly bark at nothing. So Jack eventually came over and I said, all right, let's do an investigation. So we set up out back and waited till it got dark and started asking questions and whatnot, seeing if anything came up on the SB7. And there was actually at one point, I got a little bit too curious and I was wondering if there is a spirit of a Wendigo on the property.
Oh,
And as
Hmm.
soon as I asked that, the SB7 got knocked over and the flashlight started like going on and off and on and off. And it wasn't even like 5 or 10 minutes after that, somebody on the live, because we were going live on TikTok, somebody in the chat said there's something showing up on the live, and he looked at the phone and we saw like this blue like spirit starting to show up, and I thought it was just something, the camera being tricky or whatever. But I looked at it myself and it was like standing in the yard. I could see it with my own eyes. And it started to form and it stayed there for maybe 15 minutes and then it eventually went away.
wow.
And what was really freaky is after um, the live, and after the day had gone by, he's texted me the next day, and he said that somebody zoomed in on the picture, and they said it looks like a werewolf spirit. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it looks like a werewolf. Like the spirit itself looks like it manifested into like a werewolf or a dog man.
Wow.
And I looked at it, and you could clearly see the ears, the eyes, the nose, and like the body structure. It was really freaky, but it looked just like a dog man or a werewolf. And it was really freaky because that same day of the investigation, Jack and I were talking about Dogman and werewolves.
Wow. Wow. What do you now personally, Dave? What do you think these things are? What's your personal opinion?
I mean, I like to keep an open mind on it. I mean, I see a lot of people, they say they're physical manifestations. Some people think they're like, they can be spirits. I mean, there's other people that think like they might come from like another dimension. And the
Right.
further they get away from like these gates that they come through, the more physical they become.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of stuff that I hear like from Josh Turner and Paranormal Roundtable.
Yep.
Because I listen to him. And I mean, you hear all kinds of stories and what people believe they are. I mean, I think that they're probably from another dimension from the
Yep.
sounds of it. Kind of like maybe what Bigfoot is. I mean, maybe they come through and then they get stuck here.
Sure.
So they become physical, I guess, eventually.
Yep. Well, it's awful. You know, we talk about this quite a bit, Nick and I, even amongst each other when we're on the phone. You know, and it's interesting how, you'll have an open snowfield with a track line. Maybe 2, 3, 4 tracks, and all of a sudden they stop. Where the hell did this thing go?
Exactly. Where did they go?
Whether it's
They had to go
Dogman,
someplace.
Bigfoot, exactly. Where did it go? You know what I mean? Like, so, I over the years, I was more of a flesh and, I do think I don't mean to take your episode, but I'm just saying, I agree with you. I think that these things could be interdimensional.
Oh yeah, like especially after I saw that spirit out back here, that's why I've had more of an open mind towards what they are.
Sure. Yeah.
You mentioned tracks. I completely forgot, but I do actually have a cast of a footprint.
Okay.
And this was taken at my grandmother's. This is when they put their new garage in. So they cast it with concrete, but it's a paw print. There's that, and there's my hand.
Oh.
That thing is actually pretty damn big.
Can you see it, Nick?
Yep. I lost the picture for a second here. I had to go click. But yeah, oh, that's pretty damn good.
That's not bad at all, man.
4. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot I was going to show that, so I'm glad you mentioned tracks.
Glad you showed us that, man. I'm glad you showed us that. Now, that was cast in Akwesasne?
Yep, right on my grandmother's. It was probably 2010, 2011.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't think it was a dog because, I mean, around that same time, there wasn't really feral dogs around the res. A lot of people keep their dogs chained up.
Yeah.
And my grandmother's, she's never seen dogs around at all. I mean, right now we do have strays that run around, but they're nowhere near that big.
Nowhere near that, yeah. I mean, that was as big as your hand.
Oh yeah, it's a big print. My uncles they didn't even know what it was.
Yeah. Wow. And probably a couple guys that know their stuff too.
Oh, definitely. They're big hunters. They've never seen a paw print that big. Like at first they're thinking, oh, it must have been like a gray wolf. And it's like, oh, well, they were kind of extirpated in this area, so.
Right. Yeah, down towards you. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, Dave, any more experiences?
Well, we did go out and do some more investigations. Jack and I went out last year. It was during the summer, and when we went out on the same. Well, it's actually right next to our gun range, and that particular night, we did some calls and some tree knocks and whatnot. Well, something or two things it sounded like approached us that night, and they were circling us, and it sounded like it was something on 2 legs. And Jack wasn't used to this stuff because he hasn't really been out in the field for cryptid investigations.
Right.
And he said like the hair stood up on the back of his neck. He got goosebumps, and he wanted to get out of there. And I was just like, oh, let's see if we see anything first. And then it got closer, And he's like, "Oh no, I don't want to be here anymore." So we ended up getting in the truck and leaving. And the most interesting one was recently. Um, we were on that same property, went out and did a night investigation. Um, there wasn't anything unusual that particular night because a lot of the animals were out, so obviously there wasn't anything around.
Right.
But what was weird is I found, don't know if it was an elk or a moose leg, but something had dragged it onto our property. And the thing is, we don't have any moose, we don't have elk in our area.
No, yeah, not
And
where you're at now.
yeah, and this leg, it looked like it was like broken, like something snapped the leg off.
Snapped it. Yeah.
Like we were thinking, oh, maybe somebody, went on a hunting trip and harvested one, but you would think that when they cleaned it up, that they would use a saw.
Yeah.
This looked like it had like bite marks on it and something had broken it.
Right.
So we were
Sounds
really confused about that. So how it got there, I have no idea.
wow. Especially if it was a moose leg, what would have been that big to take out a moose? You're
Oh, for
talking,
sure.
some sort of. We interviewed a guy recently who watched a Sasquatch break a moose's neck,
Yeah.
and I
Mhm.
got to tell you, to be able to put down a moose, I mean, that's some power.
We're talking 1,600 pounds of nastiness in a moose,
Yeah.
with the
Oh yeah.
antlers and everything. And that thing must have been, oh man, that must have been a 10-footer,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and strong as all get out. My God.
Oh yeah. The hoof that we found definitely came from a pretty damn big animal. I
Yeah.
mean, it was the hoof itself was bigger than my hand. I think he's got photos of it. I didn't really want to pick it up because that thing, oh, it stunk to high hell. But
Oh yeah. There's something you got to do is take some plastic or rubber gloves with you. So this way you
yeah,
can handle things when you get out there. Because you definitely don't want that to get on you. I mean, you never know
mhm,
what's on it.
Yeah.
Just the E.
Exactly.
coli itself,
yep,
could give you, and if you touch your eye, you brush your mouth, suddenly you've got it in your body now. So definitely you
mhm.
want to put that in your backpack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely got to
Absolutely.
start doing that.
What are the Dave? The more I know down on the res, there's you have your traditionals, and then you have how am I trying to say this? You have your traditional natives, and then there's like more modern ways of
Modernized.
yes,
Yep.
thank you. What are the traditionals? What are their views on the Sasquatch and the Dogman?
I've never really heard too much on Dogman. I know there's people that have mentioned it. A lot of people try to keep it hush hush for some
Yep.
reason. I don't know, it's because of the criticism they might get from it,
Yep.
but a lot of the elders that I've talked to,
Yes.
they see Sasquatch as more like a guardian
Okay.
and not hostile. I mean, they said they will be hostile
Oh yeah.
if they have to be.
Really? Huh.
Um, and the ones that I have mentioned Dogman, they say they're something that they shunned, I guess. They didn't want anything to do with it. Like I guess um like back before like European settlers were here, a
Hmm.
lot of tribes had to keep their children and whatnot protected because these things would apparently come in and nab children in the middle of the
Hmm.
Sure.
night.
Yeah.
And
So
they did mention that they did get into territorial disputes, like Sasquatch and Dogman would both get into these disputes with each other.
yep.
And most of the time, it didn't end very well for the Dogman.
Right. Yeah. It's a big debate in the field we've had lately. Ain't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Who would
definitely.
who would win?
Who
Right.
would win? I don't know. I got to go with the Squatch on this one, depending. Depending on the circumstances, I guess.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if they could pick up a rock and smash a skull with it, I gotta go with the one that can actually use weapons and utilize rocks and
Yeah, they always
logs.
seem that way. The Sasquatch seems like it'll pick up a tree limb, which is like the size of a tree, or it'll pick up
Exactly.
rocks the size of bowling balls.
Yep.
Ah,
So the elders actually say that it was something they shunned, huh? The Dogman.
Yep, from what they said, it was more of like it was one of those something that they definitely they believed they had totems about it. I forget where it was, but there was uh there was a book that I was reading that had a bunch of like totems and whatnot in it,
Yeah.
and
uh,
they had one. It was like a wolf totem almost, but the difference between that and an actual wolf totem is this thing was depicted with having human-like arms,
Right.
Okay.
and I read about it, and that's what they had a different term for it. It wasn't like a dog man. There was a Mohawk term that kind of, I think it translated to like a man wolf,
Okay.
but I'd have to look it up. But there's definitely a book on it somewhere. It might be at the library. I'd have to find it. It's definitely an old book though,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they do have Sasquatch totems as well.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. All
Yep.
over. I mean, and that's the other thing, man. Like you have for example, we have the Mohawks on the East Coast, upstate New York
Mhm.
into Canada, and then you take the Apaches, for example, out in New Mexico.
Mhm.
They describe the same type of creatures, and like you said before, the European settlers came. These people had no contact with one another. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And then, but they're talking about they're describing the same creatures, you
Yep.
know? So, I say to people, you tell me, how does that occur? You know?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's definitely interesting, especially when, like you said, the natives don't like to talk about the dog man. That's Nick, you said you've run into that problem.
Yeah, they will not. Well, Dave, they will not talk to me because I have no
Yeah.
Native American in me, and they just, that's it. They just walk away. They'll talk
Yeah.
about other things, but they do not want to talk about
Right.
Sasquatch, Dogman, even Thunderbirds for that matter,
Right.
which I can't
Mhm.
understand. But you and Jay, being part Native American,
Yeah.
I guess they'll open up to you, which
Yeah.
is frustrating sometimes. I mean, because I'm all the way down in Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and I'm go near the res, or I see somebody in town that, I strike up a conversation with them. They're obviously Native American. And
Mhm.
when I try to slide in that topic, forget about it. They don't, it's like, some of them are very polite and some of them
Sure.
just, they put their hand up and they walk away. When I
Yeah.
broach that subject, some of them are polite and say, I really can't get into that. And they
Mhm.
go their way.
Yeah.
It's frustrating as heck, especially since I'm traveling 2,500 miles to check something out and they don't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
But I understand. I have to respect their
Beliefs. Yeah.
heritage and the
Sure.
way they do things. Plus, a lot of
Mhm.
them don't want to talk about Dogman or skinwalkers. Forget about it. They totally just
Oh
walk
yeah.
away. This has
Yeah.
happened to me, Jay, by the way, about a good 25, 26 times.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Well, I try. I really try. But
Yeah.
when I
Mhm.
bring up when they don't walk away after I say Sasquatch and Bigfoot and by the way, the different tribes all have different names for the
Yeah.
for the Bigfoot,
Mhm.
and then I'll throw in Dogman, and the ones that do stay around and are still talking to me, and then I'll bring up Skinwalker. That's the end of that.
Yeah.
And a sheriff that I got to know in this one town in New Mexico, he told me you bring up the word Skinwalker, they don't want to say the word, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to even think about it, because then that's actually, I guess, for a white man's term, it's jinxing them,
Yes.
Mhm.
and the Skinwalker might come to their house, and they
Mm.
don't want that.
Yeah.
Wow, it's really something.
Well, I know
I
the
guess.
Navajo belief is if you see, I kind of, I think a lot of people get the two intertwined sometimes. When the Navajo talk about the
Right.
skinwalker, they're
Mhm.
describing to me what sounds like a dog man. You know, and they actually say their belief on it is if you see one, it's out to do your family harm. So
Mhm.
I can see in that culture why they wouldn't want to talk about it. Like you were saying, Nick. I
Yeah.
can I can see why.
Oh, I definitely know what you're saying because 2018 we went on our hunting trip. My uncle and I went out to Montana,
Oh, okay.
Right.
and we
Oh,
went to
wow.
the Fort Belknap reservation,
Yep.
Yeah.
and I got talking about cryptids with our hunting guide Toby, and I was gonna bring up skinwalkers, but I like something in the back of my mind was like saying, "Don't bring it up." And eventually, like I had to reword it, and I had to use a different way to say its name. And we got talking about it at dinner, but he wouldn't say their name. And the really freaky thing about that particular night, I mean, this is after talking about Bigfoot and Dogman, Skinwalkers, and even the Thunderbird.
Yep.
That night when I went to bed, I ended up getting up. I had to use the bathroom, and the moon was really bright that night. And we had there's a light outside my window, and you got Toby's house, then you had like the guest ranch where we were staying. And when I was walking back to my room, there was a shadow being casted through my window that wasn't there before. And when I saw it, it had the shape of a wolf's head.
Oh wow.
I stopped dead in my tracks and I looked and I was like, okay, that wasn't there before. And I sat there and I looked and I waited and I waited. I was like, is this thing going to move? And its ear twitched. And I said, nope,
Yeah.
I am not going in my room. So I went and I laid in the couch for
No.
a bit. And about 10 minutes later, I went back to see if the shadow was there and it was gone. So I
Wow.
went and I closed the blinds and I jumped back in bed. But I also made sure the doors were locked.
Right.
And needless to say, my rifle stayed pretty close to me that night.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Yeah. Do you carry when you out, Dave?
Definitely when I'm out in the woods.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to get my permit changed because I transferred my license from St. Lawrence County and they didn't allow open carry or concealed carry, I
Right.
should say.
Right.
Yeah.
But Franklin allows it, so
Yeah. Franklin allows it. Yeah.
so now that I got my concealed, I carry it everywhere, apart from being at work.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, don't you like? I'm Nick's. I'm not pro kill. Nick's not. I'm sure you're not either, unless it's self
Oh, it
defense.
has to be self-defense. I
It
won't
has
use
to
it
be
other
self
than
defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
But
why I might say to you, Dave, you might want to get yourself some bear spray,
Mhm.
because this way you could, if it is coming at you, it might at least be able to slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, I know bear spray
Because,
is pretty nasty.
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. But I mean, if you hit it with the bear spray can go out to about 36 feet. It goes out in a conical pattern. So it's
Mhm.
not just straight. And you might be able to slow them down because they are fast.
Yes.
From all the reports I've taken firsthand and written and stuff I've read about, they are fast. So you
Mhm.
kind of want to slow them down, and hopefully it would work on Sasquatch too. But I mean, if they could taste, if they could smell, if their eyes work, well, I got to figure this stuff has got to do something to them,
Absolutely.
some way,
Oh yeah.
somehow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
capsaicin in the eyes is not
Yeah,
fun.
No. No. But yeah, I mean, I don't go in the woods without carrying something, and a lot of people say, a lot of people out there in the field they discourage it, but like
Mhm.
Nick, you always say, we have a right to go in safe.
yeah.
We also have a right to come back out
Come back out. I mean,
in the same condition as we walked in,
I
you
mean,
know.
I went in. I usually go in with a team of seven. There's seven of us, and we're highly trained. And on one occasion, when we were down in the southern part of the United States, we didn't come upon it. It came upon us suddenly. Was a large mountain lion,
Oh.
Mm-mm.
and we all froze and aimed towards it. And one of the guys in the front, because we walk in a diamond formation, one of the guys in the front let out. I mean, this was a male. I mean, it was
Mhm.
quite huge.
Sure.
One of the guys in the front just unhooked his bear spray, clicked the safety off, and squirted it. And you can't really see it as it's going out. Well, this thing didn't really see it, but it reached out to it, and it just totally didn't want to have any part of it or us at
Right.
that point. And it
Right.
took off. I mean, it took off at a run. I don't know if it got hit in the face, may have been a little bit further than 36 feet from us, but this thing does reach out to 36. Maybe the wind blew it its way. All I know
Mhm.
is we would have had to shoot it. And
Yeah.
I mean, this thing was huge. Jay, I mean, it was pretty damn big.
A
You
couple
know?
100 pounds.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a big one.
I I'd say even more than 200 pounds.
Yeah.
It was huge, full of muscle, and you could tell it was well fed, but it wasn't going to feed on us one way or another. We were taking it down. But wow. But that's why I recommend people out there, please take some bear spray with you. You
Yeah.
might have a gun, but remember these things do move. And if you can slow it down or get it to put its hands up towards its eyes or something, at least you have a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to get some bear spray. Nice thing is though, my primary carry, I carry a big bore. I got a 45-70.
Uh-huh.
So
Nice.
that's my go-to. That gun's never let me down, especially with whitetail.
Yeah, they definitely got some knocking power. That's for sure.
Oh, for sure.
45-70, yeah, definitely got some knocking power. And Nick, you guys use 308s, correct?
308,
200
but
grain.
we use special rounds.
Yeah, yeah.
It's 200 grain, and including in our 10 millimeter Glocks, we also have 200 grain bullets, solid core, solid
Yeah.
bullets, no no jacketed hollow points. You
Yeah.
need penetration with these things.
Yeah. Because who really, you got to think about it, guys. You're going through, for all you listening out there, you've got the muscle tissue. You've got the bone structure. Who know? We don't even know how thick. I mean, Nick, you and I just interviewed someone that shot Dave, he shot this thing, and then the round, he could see the dust fly off this thing's face. He shot it with what, a 40 caliber, Nick? I think
Yeah,
he said
yeah, but it was a hollow point.
hollow point.
And
But
you need penetration. And these things,
yeah,
first of all, the skin, the hide
yes,
itself is probably thick and strong. And then you're going to go through muscle, which is
yep.
probably super thick. I mean, look where they live, what they eat. They don't eat cake. They don't eat candy. Come on, and then the bones must be, God, the bones must be about as thick as my Yeti, my blue Yeti microphone
I
here.
would think so. Yeah.
If not thicker. I mean, and then if you're talking about a Sasquatch that's maybe 10 or 11 feet,
Oh God.
I mean, my God. Hmm.
That's why I got to upgrade. All I've got is for my semi-automatic AR is the AR-15. I want to upgrade to the 308.
Yeah, and plus, I would definitely carry a pistol
Yeah,
because
I do. Yeah,
when you run out of ammo, instead of doing a magazine change, you just
yep,
drop it, drop it onto your chest, let it hang while you're reaching down and you're taking up your secondary arm because
exactly.
you need to get that thing if it's
Yeah,
coming at you. I mean, these things are huge.
yeah, absolutely,
Oh gosh.
absolutely. So yeah, Dave. So you heard any other encounters you've gotten inside your uh, book of knowledge
Or heard of.
or heard of from down where you're at right now?
There's Jack's recent encounter. I gotta think. Was there any other encounters that I heard? It wasn't recent, but I can tell you encounters that my friend actually had here on the reserve.
Okay.
And my friend Aaron, he used to work for forestry at Environment Division. He
Oh,
works a different place now, but he was doing an urban tree survey,
okay.
and he was surveying property behind it's a restaurant called 37 West.
Yeah, I know the
And
place.
yep, and behind there is just thick forest, but where he was sampling was like right on the border of a forest, and there was one little tree that was out in the middle of this big friggin' field of like phragmites.
Yep.
So he had to go and survey that tree because it still counts. So he was measuring the diameter of the tree, and as he was sitting there, he said he could hear something running towards him,
Huh.
and whatever it was hauling ass. And eventually it got up to him, and Phragmites was like 6, 7 foot tall, but whatever it was on 4 legs. He said it just flew past him. He said it was definitely canine in nature. He saw the head very briefly, and the thing's back on all fours was like damn near up to his shoulder.
Wow.
And it's like there's no way that was a wolf. It's like a wolf full grown. I mean, you're lucky if its back comes up to maybe your waist.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this
Right.
thing's back was up to his shoulder.
That's
And
big. Yeah.
That is damn big. And
yeah,
you're talking 5 feet. I mean, God, at least that's damn big.
he got the hell out of Dodge after he saw that.
How close did
Yeah.
it come to him?
Oh, that thing. He said he felt the wind when it ran past him.
Ooh.
I guess it didn't see him because of how thick the Phragmites was, but he felt the wind from it when it ran past him, and he heard it, and he could hear that thing grunting as it was running.
Oh wow.
Wow. Wow. And your friend Jack, he said he had a recent encounter.
Yeah, he had that encounter over at Wilson Hill, which was really creepy when he told me about it, because he did an investigation for, I guess, apparently it's haunted there. I don't know if there's like a cemetery or if there's like he said he did mention something about a small ship or a vessel that sunk, and I guess a bunch of people died.
Okay.
And he was trying to speak with the spirits there, and he had the SB7. Like he had some voices pop up,
Right.
and then somebody in the chat asked a question. Oh, when are you gonna do an investigation on like the Dogman or Bigfoot? And before he could even answer their question, a spirit came up on the SB7 and mentioned the Dogman. And it was as soon as that spirit said that, he said that like the hair stood up on the back of his neck, and he looked out the window, and something was moving over in the tree line. And it was pretty dark at this point, so he couldn't really see what it was.
Right.
And he also saw something to the left over in the trees and then behind it. And I guess three creatures approached his truck, and that's when he said he saw the head pop up um,
Okay.
below his
Yeah.
tailgate, and he saw like the ears, the top of the head, and its eyes.
Okay.
And I mean, he freaked out, so he turned the truck on and he got the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah. I don't blame him. You know, it's not the first time I've heard of people using, you know, something like an EVP device on cryptid investigations.
Mhm.
Nick, you
Yeah.
know, I interviewed a guy. We interviewed a gentleman, I think, a while back. Maybe you and I weren't doing this together yet, but it was a couple of years ago. We interviewed a gentleman who did a long-term Bigfoot investigation on a piece of property out in Washington State, and they were actually using EVP devices to communicate with the
Hmm.
Sasquatches. So that's not the first time I've heard about something like that happening. I mean, people listening might think that's kind of weird, but if these things are an interdimensional creature of some sort,
Mhm.
it's not that far out of the ballpark, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely got to be a connection between them.
Yeah, yeah. Correlation between all these different things. Now, is anything else you've seen weird out there, or like to go during, before, or after your dogman encounters? Anything weird? Any notice anything in the sky? Anything like that? Any?
There's been some weird UFO sightings recently.
Okay.
Um, somebody saw uh the heck was it? They said that like they saw a string of like lights up in the air, and
Yep.
this was I think last summer.
Uh-huh.
And what was weird is like the string of lights. They said it easily looked like it was like a mile long from where it was up in the sky,
Wow.
super bright, and like people had videos of it. And um, one person actually got the best shot of it. They got the picture of the lights, and it looked like it was almost like Star Wars, how something like goes from sitting still to into hyperspace. And the
Right.
lights were there, and then all of a sudden they were gone. You just saw a
You're
streak of
gone.
light and they were gone.
Just now this on the reserve?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
there's a whole bunch of
Hmm.
people, like people were leaving the casino, and people were
Yeah.
in like the casino parking lot, and they
Just
saw these
there this weekend.
lights.
Wow.
Yep. And my sister even got a video of it too.
Oh, cool. Very
Dave,
cool.
any orbs in the sky in connection with Sasquatch or Dogman that you've had or have heard of?
Uh,
In other words, you've seen a Dogman or a Sasquatch or heard one in the woods, and you see in the sky an orb.
Before having the encounter, or was it the one that we had that um, two or three creatures surrounding or walking around us that one night back at my
Right.
grandmother's? We saw orbs in the sky that particular night, which was really weird
Hmm.
Okay.
because originally he thought like maybe these were spirits. I mean, there's some type of legend around here. I forget what it was, but there's like a forest sprite or a spirit, I guess, that people see here on the res. And when we saw it, it looked like fairies, kind of like up in the air.
Yeah.
And we saw those like right before this thing approached us and started to circle where we were sitting.
And you know, for people out there listening, natives don't lie about this stuff, right, Dave? The
Oh
native
no.
people do they take this stuff very seriously, and they do not lie. They do not make this stuff up.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when they tell their kids these stories, they don't just tell them that to scare them, but so they behave. I mean, I was told stories like that back then, and you behave because you didn't want to go out and get into trouble at night, or I mean, even during the day.
Yeah.
Like we got the story of the hoof lady here, and
Yep.
then there's even stories of what they call the little people or the stone throwers,
Okay.
little dwarves that I guess my mom has had experiences with them, my aunts when they were kids, because I
Okay.
guess they more or less relate with kids because they see adults as more of a threat.
Sure.
So with kids, like sometimes they'll like throw branches and like little stones at you. They don't want to hurt you. It's just they want to get into mischief.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mischievous. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And that's not the first time I've heard about these little creatures either. Yeah. Interesting. Well, geez, that's an hour already, boys. That time
Yeah,
sure does fly.
yeah,
That's
we're
for
running
sure.
out of
Yeah.
film time here.
Time flies.
Well,
Yeah,
Dave, we appreciate you coming on, man, and
really,
sharing
Dave. That
your
was
experiences.
some good stuff, and you actually confirmed a lot of the stuff that our research
Exactly.
has shown.
Every time we do an interview, we pick up something that goes along with our research. Like Nick, what do we have? What are you up to now as far as the orbs? 93% of
It's 94%. Concludes with the survey that I've taken. It's close to 700 people. Um, and Dave, what we're talking about is what I've done is I've spoken with people, I've written to them, they've written to me. They've either seen a dog man or had an encounter, and before and after, they've seen orbs in the sky,
Mhm.
light orbs of light in the sky. And at first, when I concluded that survey, it was 92%. Now people are
Hmm.
confirming certain things, and it's 94% because the higher. I mean, I stopped it after 6 months, but I kept taking reports and writing it down, and that's what it is. It's like 94% of the time. So
Oh
I don't
wow.
know what these orbs are. I mean, the orbs they could portend an interdimensional rift,
yeah,
some sort of a portal. They could be uh, alien spacecraft that are up there, and they're gonna zip the Sasquatch or Dogman up,
Hmm.
or maybe it's a portal because, like Jay said, when the footprint ends in the middle of a field and there's no more footprints, where'd they go? Did
yeah,
they open up a portal and did they go through? You know, these are questions we'd like to get answered. It would be nice.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, yeah, Dave, we appreciate it, man. And it was a pleasure talking to you again. And just after I stop recording, just stick around for a minute if you could.
Oh, definitely.
Um, and everybody for listening, thanks for tuning in again. Nick and I definitely appreciate it. We
Thank you
have an
all.
awesome guest coming on for you next week. So be looking forward to that. That'll be episode 2023,
3,
22,
23.
23. Yeah. So it's a good one. Just I'll give you that much. But anyway, thank you everyone. If you need to get a hold of Nick or I, you can get us on Messenger or through one of the IDP organizations, and be happy to help you out with anything you need.
Yep. Just look us up, International Dogman Project. We have the USA, Nordic countries, Southwest, Southeast, Central. We have state chapters in New York, Ohio, West Virginia, Wisconsin, uh, opening more all the time.
Yep,
So
they're
just
growing.
or send us a Facebook message. Join up. We also have the Quad Coalition of Sciences out there where we do
Yes.
everything. Paranormal, cryptids, all the cryptids,
Yep.
zoology, and
Yep.
UFOlogy. So
Yes.
one way or another, you can get in contact with us if you have something to report. And
And
we don't judge.
no, it's one thing we don't do. And we've got On the Trail Cryptid Paranormal Research Group as well. You can reach either one of us on that as well. We cover everything there. So yeah, get a hold of us on anything Nick and I just mentioned. If you need anything or you have any questions, run a report an encounter, and we'd be happy to assist you. Everyone, be good to each other, and everyone, God bless. Have a good night, guys.
Good
And
night, everybody.
stick around for a
Yep.
second if you
Bye
could.
bye.
Good night, everyone.